Hey guys, it's Jason. Welcome back to the Beyond Hope Project podcast. Today's guest, I'm very excited to welcome Lyndsey Van Sickle. Lyndsey and I have never talked before. This is literally our first conversation, and it's getting recorded, so it's going to be awesome. We're going to archive this forever. It's going to be
Oh,
amazing. So thank you so much for taking the time out to talk with us.
oh yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and so what we'd like to do on here is define hope for you to start the whole thing out, because we define hope a little different. We all know the traditional sense of the word hope, and it has, multiple different meanings, but how we define it here is hope is the spark. It's the start place to begin. And a lot of times what people will do is once they find that space, they're going to start moving down the road and ultimately fail. And they're going to think I'm a failure, or they're going to put whatever letter or whatever definition they want on there. But we also do is provide hope as the second definition, which is the place to find the path again. Maybe the path just moved a little bit, but it's still there. And take what you learned and kind of move forward. So with a definition like that, if you can go back to any point in Lyndsey's life, at any age or any intersection, what type of hope would you give that person then? And what would be some context of how you would maybe go about it?
Oh, that little spark. I mean, I feel like I need that every day. It's, be so invigorated. And then the next day, it's so easy to forget and to say, what was I doing? And the struggle. I was thinking the other day, someone asked the question, like, what would you tell seven speakers that are just starting out, like seven things that they have to have? And they were giving examples like, would it be their website and their one sheet and the very first thing that popped into my head was like, you have to know what to do when it doesn't go how you thought it would. And I was like, what would I say though, specifically what to do? And it was pretty obvious, but to me, it was like, it's just the keep going. When you think I must have failed now, or this time this isn't right, or people should be responding better to this, or I should feel more legitimate. Because I just feel like I've talked to enough people, it just comes up for everyone's journey. And to just believe in what you have. Let's see, specifically, even just thinking of this morning, I was doing some new content, looking at my marketing for some different things I'm doing, and I was getting in that meditative space, and I'm like, send me something really, really good. I love writing and thinking about these things. And the thought that came to me was like, trust what you have, you know, want desire to lean into what you have and believe and put the power into that. And that was a big spark for me this morning. A lot of times the sparks for me are personal. They're something my heart needs to remind me and to jump back in. Um, it's hard to take any spark from somebody else. For me, that's not going to work, right?
Yeah, that's great. And so when you are seeking that spark, is there some sort of trick that you use to find that within yourself? I know you mentioned meditation. Is there other things that you do that bring that part out for you?
Yeah, I'm a huge writer. I tapped into that not until about 10 years ago, and I started writing. I have my black book that came about because of some writing I did, but just in all aspects, I like to ask questions, and then I kind of listen in a meditative space. And I feel like it's tuning into, my heart or my higher self, whatever you want to call it. And I'll feel those sparks that are very specific for me individually. And they're energizing because it's tailored to me. And I'll write the answers that I get. A lot of times for me, it comes to looking what's getting in the way of those sparks.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's what the Black Book and a lot of my passion is about, is the pressures that build up in life and the stress. I thought before, it must be this stressful job I have or this house that we just built and trying to manage it all. And it must be all the clutter on my desk. And what I realized, it was everything I wasn't saying about all of that. All the stuff that was going on behind the scenes that I just kept, no, it's not that way. It shouldn't be, pushing away, pushing away. That was just building up with this weight on my chest. It was feeling, I remember in my late 20s, like I'm holding shut like closet doors that are bursting with all of this just junk and emotion and life living that had never been looked at, that I thought couldn't be. And still, um, today it still builds up and builds up, but that's what led me to find, what I call shred writing and looking at some of those things that block the sparks, the hope.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to feel that when you're so bogged down with, you don't even know what you're bogged down by.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I love that, because one of the things I like to tell people is that everything you're looking for is kind of hidden behind everything you're afraid to actually talk about or tackle. And we make
ooh,
up all these things, this monsters in the closet, right? That are these things that we go like, oh my God, like, what do I like? It can't be that. And the thing is I tell people like, what's the, because I've had people ask, what's the biggest learning you've got from brain cancer? It's like everything that you think that it's not, it is. Like, it's like everything that you question about what you're trying to go through is exactly the answer. But the problem is because we're programmed to think that that can't be, like, that simple answer can't be it, that we will avoid it at all costs, right? We'll just be like, oh damn, it can't be that. There's no way. And so I'm just curious, like you mentioned, like in your 20s, like starting to uncover that, like what was the part that kind of open, like kicked that door open for you to even explore? Because I think a lot of times, uh, especially at that age, it's the world is telling you what you should be, and to do
yeah.
something that is kind of like self-reflective is, it's scary as hell, because like you're still getting formed of like what the world is telling you as an adult, right? Like what was the spark that made you kind of question those things yourself?
You know, it's so true. I really felt like life should have been a lot different than it was for me in my 20s, is what I thought. Like success to me, I thought was being productive. I thought was feeling really happy all the time. I thought success was loving being a mom while balancing having a business. And as things didn't add up in that way, I just, rather than looking at them, I just thought the worst thing I could do ever is look at it. And I thought the best thing I could do would just be to act like it wasn't there.
Mm,
A lot of us have done this. I woke up and I would put a mask on, this is the happy Lyndsey and this is who people want to see. And I didn't realize the toll it was taking on myself, though. Talking about maybe a pivotal spark. I remember one day sitting on my bedroom floor and I had my legs crossed and I had this huge journal sprawled open on my lap, and I would write all the happy gratitudes of the day in the journal. And which, I mean, gratitude journals are great, right?
yeah.
We love them. But what I was doing is I was saying, like, on this morning, I was like, Lyndsey, just write everything, just write the happy, and look, you can hear, your kids laughing and your business is going in this direction and it's fine. The market's turning and yeah, it's fine. Just write all of that. But I was completely miserable inside. And I was just write what's good. And that's what I did every morning. But that morning it was like I couldn't do it. I remember trying to, and my pen like wouldn't move. It was like
Hmm.
enough is enough feeling.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't write. And as I'm sitting there, this feeling came to me. Maybe it was a spark. I've never heard the spark thing before. Looking you up, Jason, which I love. And it was this feeling I kind of felt in my heart, and it was like, Lyndsey, like, what do you really, really want to say?
Mm.
And I was like, no, 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 no. Like I could never. That's not me. That's not who I am. That's not what I
Right.
want to be. Lyndsey, like, what do you really want to say? And it was at that point I unleashed. Like then
Yeah.
the ink started flowing, and I remember just scribbling in that nice journal, like, I'm disappointed. I didn't think things would be that. I'm frustrated. I've been anxious for years. It's piling, and um, the things that were really going on and in my heart were going out scribbling. I was writing one word on top of the other, and I don't know how, but I wrote 3 pages so fast. It was like everything new was already on the surface and coming out, and my real self, like I was just begging to be written. I tore those pages out, tore them into little pieces, took it outside and kind of threw it all out. Um, that I didn't realize that then that really was a big line in the sand for me.
Yeah.
That was when I first started. opening the door instead of pushing it all away.
Yeah.
Like if a few days later, I remember feeling anxious and pressure build up again. And I reached for that nice journal, tore through more pages of it,
Yeah.
and I started to step into who I really was and my own power and look for help and started to accept it. And that was a big changing spark for me then.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I just want to like echo back a little bit. So everybody listening really lets this sink in. You know, what Lyndsey's saying is it wasn't like that was a magic bullet that day to take those things, write them down and shred them. It was that, I think what people do is we don't realize that your wins in life are a series of small wins. Like, the feelings, just because you have conquering them in that one moment doesn't mean that the next day they're not going to bubble back up. But
Yeah.
what she was doing in this process is she's not letting it define who she is. And I'm just curious, like what made you continue to do that? Like, cause I think a lot of people will do it one time and go, yay, that felt great. And then they think that that was the cure all. And then when it happens again, this goes back to like understanding the path didn't move, right? Like they go like, that was it. And then they go, well, damn, like why do I feel like crap today? Cause I just beat it yesterday. Like if you could elaborate a little bit on like what continues, like, and what you have found in the lessons of continuing to show up each day in that manner for yourself.
Tracking is huge for me. I do my daily tracking from Atomic Habits. I think that's where I originally heard of it. And I try to not think too much into things and just trust the time that I felt this was powerful for me and keep going with it. With shred writing, I don't know if it was God looking out for me, if maybe it's the spark of hope. It kept coming back to me as kind of a reminder, like almost those same words, like, what do you really want to say, Lyndsey? And that initial, I didn't feel better. I didn't solve a huge problem, but I started to feel lighter. I started to feel stress release. And that feeling was something I had not felt before. And I wanted more of that. So following, even without knowing, but following the more that I knew could be there, trusting that I don't know what this is, but I'm going to find me. I'm finding something good, keep going. And later, once I started tracking it, I really was making more progress. I mean, that was 10 years ago. I don't know how many like nice journals I shredded through. Like for me, that was just the thing,
Yeah.
and then switching to cheap notebooks. And then I put my process into a book because people would ask me and I was so passionate. So, I mean, the evolution of it, you're right. And it's so messy. I would think, start writing and then you'll start to feel like really good and then you'll feel legitimate and then you'll really be happy. And it's like, what? It's even this morning, grabbing for paper in the muck and in the struggle and finding power in all of that feels like I don't want to go through this. What's wrong? I'm starting to realize that's nothing wrong. Like that's a cool piece to go through and find something
Yeah.
powerful there.
You probably saved yourself a lot of money too, getting cheaper notebooks.
Oh yeah, right? Those
Is that what sparked your book, the Black Book? Is that where did it come
It's
out of that?
exactly what sparked it because
Yeah.
I started to realize there was hacks and things I could ask myself. Like I would say, I know, Lyndsey, like there's nothing you want to say right now about XYZ situation, but if you could say something, what would it be?
Mm.
Something so simple or there were just a lot of prompts. So I started to record them and I put them in the Black Book with my simple process. And now I call it like the tear it up process. And, tearing it up in the business world is like succeeding in a huge way and being innovative and then tearing up the paper to do that, right?
Yeah.
If you
100%.
block what gets in the way, you're unstoppable. Your
Yeah.
problem solving mode, it's clear. No one could have told me that. I had to go on my own journey.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like you're slaying the dragon. Like you in your head, you've built up this big monster, right? And then it's like once it's in paper form, you're like, oh, well, I mean, I've done this stuff before, like, and I love the act of like destroying it. Like, it's not like you're destroying your life. It's just like you're no longer allowing that stuff to define who you are. And that stuff is such a powerful thing. And I would definitely encourage people to grab your book for that reason. I mean, the beauty of writing, and tell me if you agree or disagree. I wrote children's books and now I do adult books, but the process was that regardless of what you're writing about, you'll realize in the process of writing, there's a lot of other people out there that are looking for exactly what you're writing. And I think a lot of times people are trying to write this book that's going to change the world, but you change the world by changing your world. And I think that's what you're doing in the process of that. And that's really, really cool to do. And so did you grow up in Utah as well? Or like, what was like growing up like for you? Were you a weird, awkward kid? Were you the kid that had it all together? Like, where did you fall on the spectrum of all of us broken children out there in the world? Like,
Okay. Yeah. And I love how you said it's like slaying the dragon. And then you get there and you're like, oh, the dragon was actually something not huge and it's for
no,
me and power and
yeah,
way bigger than us, right?
yeah,
Um, okay, so I grew up in Utah, really religious community, really a lot of perfectionism.
mm,
Like growing up, there just wasn't another option other than like having your shit together,
yeah,
you know, and just, which, wasn't a bad thing, but you don't realize as a kid that you're kind of like, this is it.
yeah,
Like things need to be in line and I need to be smart and with it and look good and struggling is bad. That was kind of the feel, like avoid struggle at all costs. And what a shift when you
yeah,
realize, gosh, struggle is actually this kind of a gift thing, even though I don't know if you ever really love it.
yes.
So that's how it was. I was the oldest of five girls and
Oh my God.
kind of felt this responsibility with them and wanting to keep everything in order and going well for them and in life. And I still do love like order and things to look well, but it's been good to find the ways that work a lot better
Yeah.
without all the pressure.
Did you find that difficult to go through that process of having that structure as young, being like it's the struggle's bad, like did you find that was like the big hurdle to overcome, or was it pretty much like that awakening happened, you said, okay, I've gone this way, I know the answer to that, but I'm going to check out over here? How did that work out for you?
It was really, it was so hard that I almost felt like I was two people for a long time.
Mm,
If I'm thinking about your question, it was like I couldn't even stand to think of how I really was compared to who I thought I had to be. And it was just years of this kind of turmoil and making terms. Like, even when I started shred writing, it was like, okay, fine, if I just let myself look at that much. But it gets so ingrained in us how life should be that I thought then I'll still have this perfect picture going on. And um, I don't know, the journey of realizing that wasn't a real thing. And it was more the real like satisfaction, really long term, was being able to be who I really was and help, if that could help anyone or serve, that was such a different vibe that's a newer thing.
yeah. So when you go through that process, like of this like awakening part of you, I think that's what makes you a better writer and a better communicator and a speaker. So I'm just curious, like when you're doing a lot of your speaking stuff and things like that, do you find that it helps you be more relatable to people? Or what's your technique when you're speaking that you kind of draw that bridge between that story, but not going too far into triggering yourself into some sort of like on stage shredding, like
Right. The more, I don't know, the more I'm learning about myself, do you feel this way? The more I realize I have to learn.
Mm.
And it's just a really, really humbling. Like you reminded me of the Taylor Swift song, like it's me, I'm the problem. And
I didn't know that was one, but yeah.
yeah, I think of that. And just realizing like the way I'm viewing the world right now, it could change in a few months. And it does keep surprising me. And let's see, as I think about my audiences, a lot of times I'll bring up like, what are some of the most difficult things in the workplace? You know, in general, there's some that people have in common: time management, difficult conversations. And I've been surprised. Maybe it's not the things I was feeling that day when I was shred writing, but there's definitely things that people aren't saying that for all of us. Um, thinking even just of a difficult conversation. If you go back to maybe the last hard one you had, it's like human nature to just be like, I've got this, I can solve it. Like, because I don't want to come off as not being able to, or saying, I don't know, or this is, so we'll jump in and kind of like overwork it and keep going with things. And it's interesting. I feel like we're almost not meant to be able to figure it all out. It's almost more about slow it down. Um, slower is smoother, smoother is faster. Like in the military, they'll say that. And a way to slow it down is look at all the things that I'm believing around this and that I feel about this and that I'm tied to about this person and this conversation, and kind of what you're saying in a way. I think like another way to go around it, all the things that I'm bringing to the problem and my beliefs, and kind of looking at those and releasing it. And then I'm amazed the confidence and power someone can have to go in and just like totally solve that problem, have that conversation. But first looking at what am I bringing here, in a safe place and a
Yeah.
time for that.
And when you're speaking, are you typically dealing with like business audiences, or are you doing more like one-on-one with people, or what does your typical
Uh,
audience look like?
there's a lot in real estate, dental, and then a lot of like women's retreats and groups too.
Yeah.
So,
And are you?
and
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, I just in the summer, it turns out to be there's like quite a few teens that I kind of just love to do on the side, and teen groups, and that's one of my favorite things. And we'll talk about some of the main things that are holding them back. And it's amazing how many we do all have in common, but if we don't talk about it, we don't realize, like not feeling good enough, not wanting to disappoint ourselves or others, not thinking that we can reach a goal if we do set it. And I broke that down just, a week or two ago with some teens with a worksheet. And well, what are the three things about the one that's the scariest to you? Like, which one of those is the scariest? And just to see that, like, I had some teens say, I don't like writing, I don't like doing personal work, I don't like doing development, but they were like, it's almost like my brain's doing it for me. That was the comment I had. Like, I can see some of this stuff is so scary, and this is why. And I'm pulling the covers back, like you said, and it's not so bad. And I'm
Yeah.
seeing what's going on and what's kind of ruling my life about this. And pressure releases a little. It's like the putting the power back into our own hands, right?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things that could be solved by people just realizing that, like, we're all struggling with the same stuff, regardless of anything. And we're just that it's almost like if you have that, there's something beautiful about just taking out a journal and a pen and writing stuff down, because you're unplugged from all the stuff telling you all the reasons why you shouldn't
Yeah,
feel that way, right? And it's the
exactly.
simplest answer always seems to be the right answer. And I think there's a lot of parts where people don't realize that. And so I commend you for like going out there, especially with teens, and helping them see that, like, what everything seems so messed up in your world right now is actually going to be the answer that's going to solve your problems when you get older, and it really, like, if you could learn it now,
Hey, that's good. That's good, right?
and it's like, if you can learn that now and go like, yo, listen, like, everything you're questioning about yourself, it's going to be 10 times magnified when you're an adult if you don't deal with it now. And so yeah, that's really cool. And it is interesting because my stuff tends to be more in the business type of world, like big groups and stuff like that, when I do the speaking stuff. But it's the same stuff. It's dealing with the idea of like not feeling like you're enough, like feeling like there's something wrong, like and trying to solve some big problem with some magic button. And
Can
it's
we
in
just
a
all,
yeah,
oh, go ahead.
it's all in the dirty work. It's all in a dirty work, and
All the dirty work.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I would love just
We
to hear, like,
all are thinking like, oh, I couldn't know what to do. I couldn't have this solution. It couldn't be this simple.
yeah,
Like, you're saying.
So how many times did you go through that process before you finally trusted it though? Because I'm gonna guess you're just like, myself, where you you do it and it's like, okay, that works. But then you go, especially growing up where everything had to be perfect or whatever, you go like, well, wait a minute, like that's too dirty. How do I keep
I
digging through that?
mean, it's embarrassing. I mean, years, honestly, and it's not just a linear thing like you talk about. It was back and forth and messy, and it still is. I think the difference now is as I found more of myself, I started to feel like I had a foundation to stand on. And I started to feel like I had something I could go back to and not it was less up and down extremes of like feeling like, oh, I have something that works and it's sparking things for me. Oh no, I've lost it. And I could trust it more the more I did it. Right. And
Yeah.
so the compound effect, like you said, and letting things add up and sticking with it.
Yeah, I use that to like kind of talk about like because one of the parts you sent me in your notes that I really liked was that you work with organizations that quickly go from shutdown to showing up, and
Yeah,
that process that I think the writing does is it gets you out of shutdown mode, right? And
it does.
what are some tips that you have maybe throughout your time that if I'm somebody out there that is feeling closed off, shut down, alone, feeling negative or whatever, what are a couple tips that somebody listening to this could kind of go and take those steps to just show up to life, like in to get them to that launch pad of productivity. So maybe it's just I got to the gym today. Like or what are the things that you kind of you give people as like a little
Uh,
kickstart?
I would say very first, when you're shut down, you're in fight or flight. And so you need to get to a place where you can feel like I call it Lyndsey, where I can feel Lyndsey, where you can feel Jason, where it's a safety, right? Just a place to be free, whether, some people it's going on long runs. Obviously for me, it's writing. What is one for you, Jason? Like where are you just
For me,
in
it's
your
the gym. It's like the gym. Yeah. Yeah.
okay. Getting to those places and stepping back, as counterintuitive as it feels to step back from it, kind of trust for a minute, things will be okay, and step back and kind of find yourself and that regrouping. It's impossible to be shut down when you're in tune with yourself.
Mm.
And I had to really realize that's not something someone can tell me what it is, because for everyone, for some people it's worshiping in nature and um but letting yourself kind of have the freedom to explore that and find that. It feels like you're going slower,
Mm.
but you'll find that you're so much more productive if you found this after, and really in a sustainable way that productivity will go with you. But letting yourself take the time to step back first. That
Yeah.
would be my hugest tip. And you can't be shut down when you're present like that.
Yeah, I love that. 100% because you're always going to feel like there's a Neil Gaiman quote that I love, and I cannot remember the commencement address, but he's talking to like a liberal arts school. And one of the lines in there he talks about is that when you feel like you're walking down the street naked, you might actually be on the right path. And I equate that to like, when you start to do the real work of getting to know you and what makes you click, judgment is the first thing that's going to show up because you're going against everything that you have believed for a long, long time. And it is that dirty work that you got to do. And, you know, um, did you notice that people around you changed when you started doing that? Or were people supportive of it? Like, how did you manage through, somebody that maybe was close to you that decided, well, we don't like this version of what you're becoming. Did you ever have to deal with any of that stuff or
I think it really goes back to what we were saying in the beginning for me is like trusting it for yourself. Like, hey, I felt this spark. I'm feeling more of a foundation. I'm going to keep going with it. There was so much back and forth. If I could go back and tell myself, oh, we have my little 8-year-old on the podcast jumping in. This is Violet.
hi Violet?
If I could go back, I would say to myself, keep going with it. And that would have cut the time a lot for me to keep trusting. because once I felt like I had my own foundation, that's when I started to feel other people really start to say, wow, this is cool. I respect it, or kind of rise with you. And even starting to attract people that are doing similar things and really amazing things in their life. But you almost have, like you said, I had to really step out, feeling like you're stepping off a cliff for a long time and still go with it, still keep going.
Hi, Violet. How are you?
Hi.
Hi. We're almost done. We only have like 5 more minutes.
I'm like, just a minute. She's like, one more thing, just one more thing. But
I
they
love it.
podcasting in the summer. This is how every time I'm like, maybe this will be the one time someone doesn't come in.
No, it's great. It's like that the clip in remember back when COVID happened, the kid with look come she came like dancing.
Yeah. And they're like naked and like,
Yeah. And like
and the parents are like, shh, shh.
yeah, the parent comes zooming in and she's like slides through the door. It was like, it's great. I love it. It makes it
Yeah.
real. I mean, it's like, and that's I mean, I guess that's the point of what we're talking about is that life is real. Like, the stuff like, things aren't perfect. Things aren't going to be, one of my favorite things that I don't know if I originally wrote it or if it just a bunch of crap that I put together is that I realized early on that when I was a kid, I told a lie that practice makes perfect. And what I realized is going through all of my stuff was that it's such a lie because there's no such thing as perfect. What practice does is it prepares you for all the imperfect stuff that's going to happen. And it just prepares you to realize that like, man, this sucks. But guess what? I thought the thing 2 years ago was the worst thing I ever would get through. And that was 2 years ago. But your life didn't stop then. You're still here, right? And you're kind of like, I think that's the thing is, so I appreciate moments like that because that's just life. Like, stuff happens. Like she wants to hang out with her mom. Like that's cool. Like,
And that's why we choose to do what we're doing in
that's
a
right.
way too.
Yeah.
And meet cool people who are same. Yeah. Anyway, I love that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's great. So if you could like kind of knowing all the stuff you've done now and guys, I want to make sure that you all know that there's going to be links to all of Lyndsey's stuff. I'll link your book and all those different places. Your book, people can pick it up at Amazon and bookstores. Is that right?
It's on Lyndsey V.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
It's Lyndsey V.
we'll have all the links to those things because I definitely want to get people and I will say just from a writing standpoint, everything you're doing is so right on the money. And I appreciate that myself. I do a lot of that myself, where I write a daily. I mean, it's a book. I just haven't put it in book form. I think this morning I looked, it was like, I'm at 63,000 words on it. So it's like, I'm like, I just had to shape this into a book, but it's, whatever. But
There's nothing better than just writing to write.
yeah, it's like, but it's there, and you're just like, it's like clay. And I think that anybody in the creative process, they don't realize that like, if you're molding clay, like it looks lopsided, but all it does is take like one little bump, and all of a sudden the whole thing just makes sense. And I think writing's that way, doing what you're doing, the work like in that world. So if you could kind of go back and like answer this question is, what's the best piece of advice that you've never listened to?
Hmm. Oh, I'm so stubborn. There's been a lot. I think one huge piece of advice was realizing that I could choose to kind of pivot out of choosing stress over and over. If that makes sense. Let me see if I could be more simple. Like when I learned about shred writing, I would clear out, I would find this awesome headspace. And then so often I would go back into my phone, back into friend, right back into all the things and find my brain so cluttered again. And I always heard people say you can choose and it's a choice, but the advice I never took was to finally be like, that's enough. I'm choosing to go out of that. I'm choosing to go to X, Y, or Z. Powerful, with more space, with more writing, how I could choose my own life to be. There's your long answer.
No, that's great. I
That's a
love that.
new thing, honestly, for
Yes.
me that I'm coming into. My life is going to be what I'm choosing and nothing else, really,
I can relate to that myself because there's so many times where you have, I'm really big on meditation and writing and all this stuff like that. It's like you can have these amazing moments, but it's so quick to fall right back into everything else, whether it's, like complaining. People complain constantly, and you're just like, it's so easy to fall into that trap of just jumping in with the flow with everybody else. Like, oh yeah, you're right, that does suck, and da da da. And you're like, damn, but I just had this.
Oh, yeah. It's so true. You almost think you have to, like, it's just what you do.
Yes.
And
Yes, we
but
should complain, right? Because that's what we're supposed to do, is complain. And yeah, 100%. Yeah.
even just being able to free write, or like you're talking about, get these words down that could be clay one day. It never even dawned on me until I'm well into adulthood that, oh, I can do that. I can give myself permission
Yeah.
to do that, or to write, or to say and feel the things I want to feel. And that's something I wish I would have listened to earlier
Yeah.
too.
Is there anything that you think that if you could duplicate, like the 8-year-old version of you, that would come in like that, you could sit down with her and say, like, this is what I'm doing now? Like, what do you think that she would think of the stuff you've accomplished in your life?
Oh, what a fun question. I think she would probably cheer me on, because if I think of the 8-year-old version of myself, she was totally fine to be imperfect.
Hmm.
And I think it was later, and she was fine to be in this muck and just trust that, like, there's going to be cool things in this journey, building a speaking business and trying to tell people about a black book. Like, it's been a muck filled business, like
Oh
there's
yeah.
been really hard times sometimes, but thinking of my 8-year-old self, she didn't really care about that or think into that.
Yeah.
She'd probably be like, go, it doesn't matter that it's like you're failing sometimes,
Yeah. That's great. Isn't it funny how much like the younger version of ourselves are the lesson givers to the older versions of ourselves?
Oh my gosh, I haven't even thought of it like quite like that
Yeah.
until today. So thank you.
Yeah.
She knew what was up.
Yeah. Yeah. She knows more better than you do now. That's the crazy part. It's like, and I think as adults, what we do is we steal that from kids a lot of times. We take that, like, we how many times you think about, like, I'm a parent myself too. And you go like, we don't have time for that right now. And like, you're like, looking back, you're like, damn, but like when I was a kid, like that's all that mattered was right now. Like, and as adults, we think, we can't do that. And that's a lot of stuff when I do school visits and stuff, I would tell kids, I'm like, and I know it's in one ear out the other, because life will do this to them. It's that as you're growing up, you can do one thing an adult can't do, which is be present in the moment. And you got to fight for that the rest of your life and make sure nobody takes that. And
Oh, you
it's
do.
true. And it's like one of those things. So, but, I guess to respect your time. I know Violet is wanting to, and I promised her 5 minutes. So we're at our
Hey,
5 minutes
she's
mark.
8. She's 8 too, so
Yes,
yeah.
it's her time. So, I totally get that. But, is there anything else that you would like to pass on to people? Like, we're gonna make sure that your links are in there. I'll make sure that, we're linking up your website and your Instagram and all that stuff like that. Do you have any sort of like parting wisdom that you would love to like drop on, all the people about what you're doing, what you're up to, like hope in general?
That's so nice, Jason. It's just been really, really fun to connect. I would just say, like, we're all in this together, and we've all got this. Like, we know, our heart knows what the things that we need, and just keep following it, because that there's hope that you don't have to find out in the world or from anyone else. It's within, and we've got it. We really do have it.
You said it. That's great. I love that. Thank you so much. And guys, like I said, I'll make sure that all Lyndsey's links are in here. Make sure you give her a follow. Go check out all the cool stuff she's doing. I know I can speak for her when I tell her that, you're doing a great job. Being a human's not easy, and sometimes things go sideways. But it's in showing up for yourself every day that you're going to find that version of you that you've been looking for all along. And you don't have to look too far, because it's actually there already. And we just hope this helps. So thank you so much, Lyndsey. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your time with Violet. Tell her I said thank you for letting me borrow you for a few minutes, and best of luck on everything you're doing.
You too. I will tell her. Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
idea. Think big.